The only thing that's going to be packed tighter than your plate on Thanksgiving this year is going to be the NFL slate this week. 3 games on Thursday, 1 on Friday. Then, of course, we've got Sunday and Monday as well. Buckle up, ladies and gentlemen. If you're looking for help at the running back position, there are no teams on a bye this week. We should be at 100% unless you have injuries. And if you are dealing with those, we got to find some guys to toss in their place. This video is going to help you do all of that. Yo, what is going on, Headliner Nation? Thanksgiving week is one of my favorite weeks of the season because you've got family, you've got friends, you've got tons of good food, you've got a lot of football, but it's also freaking crazy as well because all the videos that we put out by Thursday have to be done by Wednesday now. So it's a busy week for us. I'm going to be getting through all of our running back matchups for week 12 of the NFL season. But before we jump into it, my boy Taylor has got a word from the sponsor of this video.
Hey everybody, it's Taylor back again to talk about Marine Layer, our sponsor. I really do love their clothes. I'm wearing this shirt, it's from there, and it's been through several washes already, still insanely comfortable, holding up super well. I don't even take it off to sleep anymore, honestly. But for real, last time I talked about the Respun program, and I went ahead and signed up for this tee recycling kit. I'm gonna throw several of my old t-shirts from the back of my closet in there and send it in and get a credit, because I've got my eye on a few things on their website that I probably gonna put on the Christmas list, or maybe just buy myself for Christmas, honestly, with that credit that I get. But with the holidays coming up, Marine Layer is giving a special discount to Headliner Nation. We actually have like our own link now. So you can go to marinelayer.com/headliners. That's 15% off your entire order at marinelayer.com. Maybe you're looking for a gift for you or somebody for the holiday season. Marine Layer has you covered with literally the perfect gift. You can go once again to marinelayer.com/headliners for 15% off your entire order for a limited time. They're saving your closet, or even somebody else's if you're buying a gift, I guess, one t-shirt at a time.
All right, appreciate it, Taylor. Thanks for sharing a little bit of knowledge from Marine Layer. But for now, Thursday, the first game on the slate, the Detroit Lions. For maybe the first time ever, I'm not hearing people complain about having to watch Detroit on Thanksgiving. Now, last week against Chicago, you could say Detroit lucked out, or they powered through, or they showed grit, or really, I guess it depends on who you're a fan of. But this week, it's not going to get any easier. Getting Green Bay at home on Thanksgiving, the defense is going to have to be ready to go. But for Green Bay, the running game right now just isn't getting it done. And unfortunately, Aaron Jones is injured once again. Now, Matt LaFleur came out and said that Aaron Jones' knee injury isn't something that they expect to be a long-term issue. But I highly doubt he's turning around in the next week, and he's going to be ready on Thursday afternoon. And even if he is, Detroit still boasts the 5th ranked run defense in the NFL and allows the 5th fewest fantasy points to the running back position. So the only person that I'm really looking at right now is going to be A.J. Dillon. But even he isn't offering us a whole lot. So far this season, Aaron Jones has missed weeks 2, 3, 5, and the better portion of this week in week 11. And in the 3 full games that he missed, A.J. Dillon finishes the RB 30, 52, and 12. And then this past week, he finishes the RB 22 against the Chargers defense that got ripped apart by David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs the week before. So A.J. Dillon, even when Aaron Jones has missed games this season, has not been the staple of success or consistency that we would like. Yes, he's got that top 12 finish, but it was against the Las Vegas Raiders. So really the only way that I'm looking to A.J. Dillon this week is if I'm dealing with so many injuries or have so many holes that have to be filled that I'm just at this point grasping for straws and starting somebody that I know that's going to get starter-like touches without a whole lot going to anyone else on the roster. All right, don't look now, because for those of you that were super upset with Jahmyr Gibbs at the beginning of the season and wanted to drop him and move on from him and everything else like that, he is now the RB9 overall on the season, and that includes missing 2 games. And of the 8 running backs ranked ahead of him right now in terms of fantasy points on the season, only Christian McCaffrey, Travis Etienne, and Raheem Mostert are averaging more fantasy points per game. In fact, since missing weeks 5 and 6 with an injury, since coming back in week 7, Jahmyr Gibbs has been the RB2 in half PPR leagues. And this is now back-to-back weeks with a fully healthy David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs, where both of them finished inside the top 10 running backs. So we've seen it, ladies and gentlemen. Detroit loves to run the football, and they've got two really good running backs at doing exactly that. And now at home on Thanksgiving with the home crowd behind them, they get to face a Green Bay Packers defense that has allowed the 5th most rushing yards on the season. Let's absolutely lock Jahmyr Gibbs and David Montgomery into our top 10 once again this week. I gotta say, even though he's an RB1, I really feel like Brian Robinson has been one of the most frustrating running backs to own this season, because there's really no middle ground with him. There's a lot of highs and there's a lot of lows. Because on the ground this season, he has 6 games where he has 10 or fewer rushing attempts, one where he had 14 rushing attempts, and then in the rest of the games, he has 17 or more rushing attempts. So it feels like either, yeah, Brian Robinson, we're going to pound the ball with you, or we're going to give you minimum touches. And now with Antonio Gibson banged up over the last couple of weeks, he's seen a huge increase in his passing game workload with 13 targets over the last couple of weeks. He's scored some receiving touchdowns earlier in the season, and he's seen a few targets here and there, but nothing like we have seen over the last couple of weeks. And with that work in the passing game, it has put him inside the top 10 running backs over the last couple of weeks as well. So for Brian Robinson, when you take a look at what he's doing on the ground, it's either hit or miss with him. And the passing game work recently has really helped prop him up. If we could get that type of work every single week, then he definitely would be a guy that is really inside the top 10 every single week. But because his groundwork is so up and down and so inconsistent, it's really hard to look at him and say, I absolutely can lock him inside the top 12 every week. Now, he is going to be a start, but that's why he continues to be in yellow for me, because of those inconsistencies on the ground with his rushing attempts. For some reason, though, if we get word that Antonio Gibson will be missing week 12 as well, Brian Robinson and the work he's done in the passing game over the last 2 weeks would go ahead and move up into the green spot, even though they're facing a tough defense in Dallas, because you're going to have to get Brian Robinson going. Definitely should see 8 to 10 carries on the ground, but the targets once again should end up being there as well. His upside this week could be more in line with like 14 to 16, because even with that extra work in the passing game, making him a little bit safer this week, he still has some risk in terms of his upside, because the Dallas Cowboys have allowed the 5th fewest receiving yards to the running back position. Well, hello, Tony Pollard. I want to welcome you back to the top 12 running backs, the first time that you've been here since week 6. But even with that being said, Tony Pollard hasn't finished inside the top 10 since week 1 when he finishes the RB5. And in this matchup, with the way Dak Prescott and the Dallas Cowboys offense has played through the air as of recent, I definitely think they're going to take advantage of the big plays that Washington continues to allow this season. So it might not be an issue in terms of the amount of yards he puts up, but it could be an issue in terms of the amount of touches that Tony Pollard gets on the ground. Because if Dallas just goes out and throws on Washington, like they've done recently, Tony Pollard might find himself with less than 15 touches this week. And without that, it's going to be really hard to get inside the top 12 once again. Hopefully the NFL did us a solid with Thursday Night Football this week, because by the time we're done eating all day long, the last thing I want to do is fall asleep watching football. So hopefully San Francisco and Seattle can keep things interesting and give us plenty to root for. Honestly, what else can you say about Christian McCaffrey? The only running back in the NFL to finish inside the top 24 every game this season. He is absolutely balled out. He's scoring touchdowns, he's putting up volume, and he's really the focal point of this offense, even with so many weapons around him. Maybe not the high leverage upside that we used to see from him in his early days in Carolina in the passing game, but he's still getting a decent amount of work and he's scoring touchdowns, which continues to put his ceiling at the #1 running back every single week. Unfortunately, Kenneth Walker is hurt once again. He was looking like he was fresh and ready to go on Sunday, and he looked like his explosive self. And then unfortunately, on his fourth carry of the game, something went wrong. We're not sure what it is, but when he planted his foot and tried to juke, you saw him grab his side and basically give up at that point. There's some people saying it could be an oblique. Some people are saying that they're worried that it could end up being some sort of a hernia issue. As of right now, we don't know. And I'm not going to speculate, but I'd be willing to bet he's not playing on Thursday. So this is Zach Charbonnet's backfield. Now he's getting a defense that allows the third fewest rushing yards in all the NFL, and they've done a good job at stopping the run this season. For San Francisco, that's going to be the name of the game. Make the Seattle Seahawks one-dimensional. And if you can do that, and you can try and stop them in the passing game, Zach Charbonnet isn't going to see any upside whatsoever. In fact, this past week, after Kenneth Walker went out, it was the first time all season that he finished inside the top 24 running backs. Really, what he's going to have to do is he's going to have to make an impact in the passing game this week if he wants to see his ceiling reach higher than the top 20. San Francisco does allow the 9th most receptions to the running back position, and we know that Charbonnet can definitely help out in that area. And it does look like the wide receivers will be healthy going into this week after there was some questions about Tyler Lockett last week. So when you're running 3 wide like that and Zach Charbonnet can slip out of the backfield, the hope is that we can get this guy at least 5 targets. If we can do that and he can catch all 5 of them, even if they don't go for big plays, it should be enough to slide him inside the top 24. I'm just not expecting a huge game on the ground. Now, in terms of tough defenses, he did run for 53 yards on only 5 carries against Cleveland a few weeks back. So there is a possibility. We know that he has the ability to make people miss. He's just been super inconsistent this season. I think the name of the game this week is going to be reps, though. Keep him going. Keep feeding him the ball. Even if things are not working out that great at the start of the game, continue to keep him going, because then maybe by the end of the game, he can break off a couple of big ones and finish with a decent performance. For the first time ever, we're getting a Black Friday game, and to celebrate the occasion, not only am I going to make this my Manscaped must-watch matchup, but I'm also going to make this my Manscaped giveaway. If you find yourself doing any holiday shopping this year and you're not sure what to get, head on over to manscaped.com and check out all of their awesome new products. When you check out, if you use code word headliners, you're going to get 20% off your entire order and free shipping. But like I said, I want to do a giveaway as well, and I've got several goodies to give away. The Ultra Smooth package, 3 pairs of boxers, they're not used, don't worry, and the Manscaped Perfect package. And all you have to do to be eligible to win this gift is to put hashtag Manscaped down in the comment section below. Make sure that you like this video and make sure you're subscribed to the channel. And when I do next week's Manscaped must-watch matchup during the running back start and sit show, I'll announce the winner of these gifts. If you've had Devon Chan on your IR, you were absolutely ready to put him back into your lineup this past week. And it wasn't a bad matchup either to throw him out there. But unfortunately, he goes out there and boom, same knee, injures it. Now, Mike McDaniel has said that he will not need surgery as of now. And he's not saying that he'll be ready to go this week because he still has a way to go, but it could still be possible. Personally, considering the fact that the Dolphins decided just to sit him for the rest of the game, even though he was out there begging to get back into it, it says they are going to want to be careful with him. And given this matchup here, I really feel like Miami should just play it safe. So this week, I'm going to move forward under the assumption that only Raheem Mostert will be the guy in the backfield. You'll see a little Salvon Ahmed mixed in as well, but Mostert will be the guy once again. He's going to be getting a New York Jets defense that does pretty good through the air, but allows the 3rd most rushing yards in the NFL right now. And we know Mostert can absolutely blow up and take it to the house from anywhere on the field. Mostert continues to be the RB2 on the season, maybe one of the most surprising running backs, unless you read our draft guide, that has come out of nowhere to absolutely blow up this season. And if you've had him, you have been playing him. And I feel like when people look at Mostert, they're still asking a lot of questions. Should I not play him? Is he in my lineup? Listen, he's the number 2 overall running back, and he has a good matchup. you absolutely are playing him, and he will be inside my top 5 this week if there's no chance. So I did not realize this, but Breece Hall apparently is really, really good at magic, because during the bye, he made himself disappear, and then he came back as Rachaad White. I'm kidding, Rachaad White truthers. Don't post angry comments down below. Just don't do it. But Breece Hall has not been effective since the bye. He's done some good things in the passing game, but the dude has not averaged 3.5 yards per carry since the bye week. And a lot of that has to do with the quarterback play. Right now, Zach Wilson, at times, he hasn't been great, but he hasn't been super awful the entire season. But teams are just stopping the run. They just want to figure out how to stop Breece Hall, and then they're going to try and make Zach Wilson beat them through the air. And of course, that hasn't happened this year either. So really, Breece Hall right now is just getting bogged down by running into too many defenses keying on him. But in a matchup like this, his ability to help in the passing game once again will shine through. The Dolphins continue to be really good on the ground, allowing the 10th fewest rushing yards on the season and the 7th fewest fantasy points to the running back position. So while you may not find Breece Hall inside my top 10 this week, you will find him just outside of that, because if once again he struggles on the ground, his ability to help in the passing game, in a game in where the Dolphins will probably lead for a majority of it, some checkdowns to him absolutely would help out in PPR and half PPR leagues. I just know the ceiling is not going to be great, especially if he can't find the end zone. Well, outside of Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara may be the safest running back in football right now. And he's not doing a ton on the ground. He hasn't even had a 100-yard game yet this season, and he definitely has seen some inefficiencies on the ground as well. But his volume in the passing game has been great all year long. Since coming back from his suspension, he's only had one game where he's had less than 5 targets. Now, he's going to be getting an Atlanta Falcons defense this week that has done a decent job against running backs so far this year. Right now, the Atlanta Falcons allow the 2nd fewest fantasy points to the running back position and the 3rd fewest receptions to running backs as well. So maybe Alvin Kamara can offset that. Maybe he will be the difference maker in this game. But the one thing that does worry me is who the starting quarterback is going to be. Because if it's Jameis Winston this week, is Alvin Kamara going to get those checkdowns that Derek Carr has been giving him all season long? I really don't feel like it. Kamara is a big part of the game plan, but we know that Jameis Winston wants to let it loose. So while I'm going to keep him in green this week because he's been getting so much volume and he's been helping out in the passing game and he's been doing really everything that we need a top tier running back to do, this week is going to bring a little bit of risk, so just be careful where his ceiling actually will end up lying. For all the issues that we've had with Arthur Smith and his offense this year, there's one area over the last few games that I'm really surprised we haven't been talking about a whole lot more. And it's the fact that Bijan Robinson over the last 4 games only has 3 catches for 20 yards. He's not even averaging 3 targets per game over his last 4 games. The drop off in his ability to be used in the passing game is absolutely a head scratcher. It might be even more of a head scratcher than the usage we saw at the beginning of the year, because it's now feeling like they're trying to pump him up on the ground as much as possible, but they've taken away one of the areas that he absolutely excelled at to begin the year. It still makes absolutely no sense to me why they are doing that. And maybe with Desmond Ridder back at the helm for the time being, that can start to tick up again over the coming weeks. But Bijan Robinson is great. He's extremely talented. It doesn't matter if he runs the ball or he catches the ball, he's liable to make somebody miss. This is going to be a tough matchup. But if we're not getting Bijan Robinson 5 targets per game, he loses top 5 potential every single week, and he stays right in the area of somewhere between 10 and 15 instead. At the beginning of the year, Jaylen Warren was really the type of guy that we looked at for PPR leagues. He was averaging almost 6 targets per game and really helping keep a safe floor if you were looking for somebody to flex, or maybe you needed to add in as an RB2 if you were dealing with any type of an injury. Didn't give you a very high ceiling every single week, but once again, the work in the passing game was working out just fine. But as the season has gone on, it really hasn't been that Jaylen Warren has been uber productive. It's just that Najee Harris hasn't been productive. And because he hasn't been able to pull away from Jaylen Warren and he's let Jaylen Warren hang around with his explosive plays, Pittsburgh finally said, we got to give this kid a shot and we got to start seeing some more work from him. And as soon as they started doing that, Warren said, all right, baby, let's go. Not only has he been a top 15 running back each of the last 3 weeks, but he's currently the RB2 overall for the last 3 weeks. And now he has back-to-back weeks with at least 100 rushing yards and a touchdown to go along with that. And now he gets a Cincinnati Bengals team that is allowing the second most rushing yards in the NFL, and their high-powered offense took a huge hit with Joe Burrow going down for the season last week and still not having any Tee Higgins. So this is actually the perfect matchup for Jaylen Warren, and you know what, I'll say it too, Najee Harris is worth a start this week as well, given the matchup. Because if there's going to be any time where you say, we're going to run the football and we're going to pound it right at Cincinnati, it would be this week. We know that Pittsburgh's offense is not quick striking through the air. And if Cincinnati had been at full strength, there probably would have been a worry that maybe Najee Harris and Jaylen Warren wouldn't have seen the type of targets that we needed or the work on the ground because they would have been busy throwing the football to try and keep up. But now they can keep pace. And the best way to do that is on the ground. And Jaylen Warren, I believe, will lead the pack once again. Outside of a tough matchup for Joe Mixon a couple of weeks ago against Buffalo, since Cincinnati's bye, they've actually been way more efficient on the ground than what they were to start the year. Mixon has been a top 24 running back each of the last 4 weeks, and he scored a touchdown in 3 of the last 4 weeks as well. And now with no Joe Burrow, the offense is going to have to run through Joe Mixon, whether it be on the ground or through the air. One of the main guys in this offense will have to be Joe Mixon if they are going to stay in these games and try to still finish the year with a winning record. Now, the Steelers offense has allowed the 10th most rushing yards on the season. And over the last 4 weeks, they have allowed the 5th most rushing yards in the NFL. This week, Mixon will probably be a low-end RB1 for me. He's going to make his way into the top 12, knowing that this matchup won't be half bad, and more than likely, he's going to see more volume this week than he has seen all season long. The one area that I'm really hoping that we can see a substantial increase in are his targets per game. He does have 2 games in the last 4 that have 5 targets in each of those, but he's still barely averaging 4 targets per game so far this season. If we can get him 5, 6, even like 7 targets this week, then he goes from being like a high-end RB2 with some low-end RB1 upside to a low-end RB1 with some mid RB1 upside. Who would have thought that at the beginning of the season, talking about Week 12 matchups, that Jacksonville and Houston would actually have huge playoff implications? And not just playoff implications, but for the division champion. Now, both of these defenses are in the top 10 of fewest yards allowed on the ground, with Jacksonville allowing the 4th fewest rushing yards and Houston allowing the 8th fewest rushing yards. And I already see some chatter out there about people being upset about Travis Etienne over the last couple of weeks. And it's really the same thing that we continue to just hammer home to people week after week after week. There's very few fantasy players that are going to give you top 10 performances every single week. Fantasy football is so volatile right now that you're never going to get the type of consistent production that you may have used to see at one point in time. Travis Etienne has 2 bad games back to back and panic is ensuing. People are wanting to trade him, get rid of him, whatever. But are you taking a minute to look at the score and realize why maybe he hasn't gotten the volume that you would like over the last couple of weeks? 2 weeks ago against San Francisco, they lost 34-3, and then they won last week 34-14. Doug Peterson has made some comments that he was looking for ways to go ahead and ease the workload on Travis Etienne and keep an eye on it down the stretch. They want him healthy for a playoff run. But in a tough interdivision battle like this, with a team that is trying to take over the lead in the division, do you really think he's going to leave Travis Etienne on the bench if this game is even close? 2 weeks ago against San Francisco, you were getting blown out. Absolutely give him some time off. There's no reason to get him hurt in a game that's out of control already. And then last week, you were up by 3 scores at one point. Of course, they were giving him some more rest. There was no reason to continue throwing him out there. And again, get him hurt in a game that was already out of control. Now this week against Houston, this is the week where we're going to see Travis Etienne right back on it. Is it a little bit of a tougher matchup? Absolutely. And on the ground, Travis Etienne may not reach the ceiling that you would like, but his ability to help in the pass game will absolutely keep his value for the week propped up. Is he a top 5 candidate for me this week? No, but he's going to be back inside the top 12 pretty easily. Devin Singletary has looked great over the last couple of weeks. Ran for 150 yards 2 weeks ago and 112 yards last week. Now, those games against those defenses aren't any good at stopping the run. Jacksonville is a whole lot better. So once again, we're just going to have to brace for the impact of potentially losing that upside from Devin Singletary this week. Dameon Pierce did practice at the end of last week, but was not ready enough to get back on the field. There is going to be an opportunity for him to be back this week. And while I believe Devin Singletary has taken over and earned the starting job in this backfield, Dameon Pierce likely will still see a few touches. So do we see Singletary go 23, 24, 25 carries this week? If Dameon Pierce plays, probably not. And you also have to assume that the 5 yards per carry that he's averaged over the last 2 games against less than stellar run defenses is going to come down against this Jacksonville team. I could see a whole lot of throwing on both sides of the ball here. So while it limits the upside of both of these running backs, the floor probably is going to be at least safe as long as you don't overcompensate for where the floor actually is. I would be willing to bet that a majority of you watching this segment right now are here because you can't wait to clown me or hear what I'm going to say about Rachaad White. You know we have a love-hate relationship, but I'm going to have Rachaad White inside my top 12 this week. He's in green, as you can see here on the video this week. Here's the only thing I'm going to say. It's not going to be a long-winded explanation or anything like that. This is the week that he needs to prove me wrong. He's got a good matchup going up against the Indianapolis Colts, who are currently ranked 25th against the run and allow the 4th most fantasy points to the running back position. But this is the week that he needs to go off and show a full-scale running back contribution. No more of these weeks where he averages 2 or 3 yards per carry and saves himself with a touchdown. The last couple of weeks, if he didn't get those touchdowns in those games, he finishes as the RB22 and RB25. So this is the week that he's got to put it all together. And I have faith in him because it's one of the easiest matchups that he's going to get down the stretch. For the Colts running back situation, Zach Moss is essentially done at this point. There's no reason to even contemplate starting Zach Moss. And there's really no reason to even keep him on your roster right now unless you're a Jonathan Taylor owner. If you're handcuffing Taylor, absolutely. If you still own Zach Moss and not Jonathan Taylor, you need to try and sell him to the Jonathan Taylor owner. If you've got enough room to hold on to him, then just hold on to him. If something happens to Taylor, then you've got the golden ticket at the end of the season. But JT is the guy, and it has shown over the last couple of games. Because over the last couple of weeks when Jonathan Taylor has had over 40 total touches, Zach Moss has had 8 total touches. And not only that, but Zach Moss isn't even being utilized in the passing game now. 0 targets each of the last 2 games. And this Buccaneers defense on the ground is absolutely no joke. It's through the air that you have to beat Tampa Bay. So Jonathan Taylor is going to have his work cut out for him this week. And that's why I've got him listed in yellow, is because I really feel like his ceiling is just not running back 1 potential this week. And his floor is kind of mid RB2 at best. Tampa Bay allows the 6th fewest rushing yards in the NFL and the 3rd fewest fantasy points to the running back position. So if you were hoping to get a big game from JT this week, it likely is not going to happen. But he's still the starter, and he probably is still going to see 20 total touches this week. If that happens, again, we probably get him into RB2 status. I just don't know how high his ceiling is going to go. Keep your fingers crossed that they can pass and pass and pass, get towards the goal line, and maybe they can punch one in with JT. To begin the season, Ramondre Stevenson had 2 top 20 performances. Not a great start, but a decent start, one that we weren't super upset about. But things kind of went downhill after that, because then he had 3 straight weeks where he finished outside the top 30, 2 of those being outside the top 40. And it just didn't feel like New England was utilizing him. They were struggling, and they weren't handing the ball off or targeting him in the passing game. They basically just ignored him for 3 weeks, and it drove everybody nuts, and we all wanted to be done with him. Hopefully you held on, because things are looking a little bit better, and maybe he's not the RB1 type that we would have hoped for, but he's definitely giving you some much better RB2 numbers as of lately. Because since week 6, he has finished top 20 in 4 of those 5 games. On top of that, he has 2 top 10 finishes in the same span. So what are things going to look like coming out of the break? I think that's the biggest thing for us to be looking at right now. Clearly the passing game just is not working. Mac Jones, even Bailey Zappi, neither of them are being consistent. So hopefully Bill Belichick and Bill O'Brien went back to the drawing board over their bye and said, how can we be more competitive? Well, running the football against the NFL's 4th worst ranked run defense would be a great start. New York has given up the 4th most rushing yards to opposing running backs this season. And while I would love to lock Ramondre Stevenson in for a green week with a really safe floor, it is the Patriots. And there's just no telling what they are thinking over on that sideline this season. We'll probably see a decent amount of Ramondre, and his upside is good because clearly he can have a very efficient day. If we can get him 15 carries though, that's the sweet spot right now. 13 to 15 carries for Ramondre Stevenson, and let him get 4 to 5 targets in the passing game. If we can keep doing that the rest of the season, he'll be a safe RB2 from here on out. And if you're wanting to start Zeke Elliott in this matchup, I wouldn't highly encourage it, but if you're dealing with a lot of issues, it definitely would be one that you could justify potentially putting him in given the matchup. It's super crazy because when I did this same show last week and talked about Saquon Barkley, I had him in green once again. And there were a few comments about why is he still in green. One guy asked me whenever I was going to learn to not put him in green anymore, and really proceeded to justify why he didn't want to play Saquon Barkley. And the answer is super clear, and it's super simple. He gets almost more touches than any other running back in football right now. This is a guy that's giving you over 20 touches a game, and even if those touches aren't super efficient because people are crashing on the run a little bit, he's still giving you close to or over 100 yards per game. Now, after this past week, a big week for him, he does have over 100 yards per game now, but that's exactly why you can't sit him. He's getting way too much volume. And you can't be picky at the running back position right now. People want to get super upset when guys aren't getting them 20 plus points every single game. But the running back position this year has had some difficulties. It's had quite a bit of injuries. And I mean, honestly, you can say that about the entire NFL. There's been tons of injuries this year. But with the running back position being as banged up as it is right now, really being a whole lot of committees this year, more than we've previously seen, and just having a lot of inconsistencies at the position, maybe I can't bank on consistent points every single week, but I can bank on consistent touches. And when I can do that, I'm putting together a lineup that I know can compete. To begin the season, Miles Sanders was not great. He had 1 RB1 performance, 1 RB2 performance, and 3 performances outside the top 36 running backs. To say it was kind of a disaster to begin the season would be putting it lightly. And it even felt like Chuba Hubbard was doing a little bit more with the less amount of touches he was getting. Still was not great, but with the performances Miles Sanders was getting together, it definitely looked like that Chuba Hubbard was starting to see a little bit more time on the field. And then Miles Sanders goes down with an injury, misses week 6, and then that's when Chuba Hubbard steps in and puts together the RB7 performance of the week. Coming out of the bye, it looked like it was going to be Chuba Hubbard's job to lose. And he hasn't really done anything since then either. He's put together a couple of top 24 performances, barely finding inside the top 24, has been super inefficient, super ineffective, and this past week against Dallas was once again out-carried by Miles Sanders. So right now it feels like Chuba Hubbard was not able to take the job away from Miles Sanders, and Sanders is going to get another opportunity here. And because of that, this backfield is going to split. and split backfields and a bad offense where you can't move the football through the air is just going to leave a lot of headaches on the ground. Unfortunately, with the way the running back position is right now, I keep telling people we got to be holding on to guys that get volume. I really don't care how much volume Chuba Hubbard or Miles Sanders is getting at this point in time, because honestly, we won't be starting either of them anytime soon. With Derrick Henry, it couldn't be more simple. Close game, good game. Not close game, not good game. It's the way it is with Derrick Henry this year. If the Tennessee Titans are in a game winning or keeping it close, Derrick Henry's going to get touches on the ground and he's going to put together a decent performance. If it's a game that Tennessee is out of it, he's not going to get as many touches and he looks to be extremely inefficient as well. Tennessee just has to keep the game in a positive game script or neutral game script to keep Derrick Henry on the field. And it continues to be the same issues that I hear about Tyjae Spears every single week. Tyjae Spears is getting all these snaps. It doesn't matter. Last week, being down the way that they were to Jacksonville, against a Jacksonville team that allows a ton of receptions and receiving yards to the running back position, was the week for Tyjae Spears to be the guy. And he had 2 targets. He caught both of those targets for minimum yards. It doesn't matter what Tennessee is doing. Tyjae Spears is just out there taking snaps. He's basically a decoy at this point. But we got to find games where Derrick Henry can get into a neutral, positive game script. And this matchup could absolutely be it for him this week. Because not only is Carolina ranked 24th against the run right now, and allowing the second most fantasy points to the running back position, but their offense is absolutely in a horrible state of affairs right now. They're having a lot of issues creating points, creating yards, and moving the football. If Tennessee is able to dominate Carolina at home this weekend, which they should, then Tennessee should be able to run Derrick Henry 20 plus touches, and with that would become a really nice RB1 week, which I think we're going to lock in for him anyway. Since it's already been confirmed so early in the week, there's no reason to put Royce Freeman. There's no reason to put Darrell Henderson. It is back to being Kyren Williams' backfield. And if you forgot just how good Kyren Williams was playing, let me remind you real quick. Over the first 6 weeks of the season, he finished as a top 5 running back 3 times, and he finishes an RB7 in his other top 10 performance. And you can see the numbers on the screen. 18 touches a game, over 70 yards a game, 7 touchdowns in the first 6 weeks. He was the guy for Sean McVay. He was running him out there. Sean McVay doesn't really love to run a carousel of running backs. He loves his guy. And with Kyren Williams healthy again, and McVay saying early in the week that he will play in week 12, we are right back to him. Now, this is such a great matchup that Kyren Williams is actually closer to being a green for me than he is to being a yellow. But obviously, with the opportunity to re-aggravate something, or you never know what can happen, that first week back, maybe they don't give him the full workload, I am going to be careful and not get super excited about it. But it doesn't matter. I'm too excited. Kyren Williams is back, baby. James Conner is healthy, and over the last couple of weeks, we see him back on the ground and performing like he was before he got injured earlier in the season. There's a really big difference between James Conner now, though, and the James Conner that we have seen in the past. Because in the past, Conner has made a pretty big contribution in the passing game. And this year, he's barely doing anything at all. So because of that, when we take a look at James Conner, I really want us to just temper expectations, especially in a matchup like this. Because even though LA is currently ranked 22nd against the run, we know that they can bottle up the middle of the field, and that could end up bringing some negative plays for James Conner, and we don't love that. And because he's not really contributing through the air, what we look at with James Conner is just a really, really safe RB2 floor. Now, if he scores a touchdown, there's always going to be an opportunity for him to jump up into the top 12. But if that doesn't happen, especially now that Kyler Murray is back, and maybe he snipes some of those goal line carries from him, we might see James Conner not be able to reach that as much as we would like. But it's okay, because if you drafted James Conner a little bit later on, that's fine. Take the production as a flex option, and even if he's only giving you maybe 12 or 14 points a week, it's still a lot safer than a lot of the other running backs right now. There's Jerome Ford. The inconsistencies that unfortunately continue to pop up showed themselves again this past week going up against Pittsburgh. Because in the last 3 games, he's faced 2 of the worst run defenses in football, going up against Pittsburgh this past week and Arizona a couple of weeks ago. And in those games, he ran the ball 32 times for only 75 yards. But then against one of the tougher run defenses he's faced recently, he ran the ball 17 times against Baltimore for over 100 yards. And that just continues to be an issue that plagues Jerome Ford. Those inconsistencies where he's reliant on big plays, and he's just not consistently able to create decent yards. It's almost like he's getting hit for nothing or getting big chunks. Now, he did score a touchdown this past week to save his week and give you a top 24 performance, but we're going to need better from him. And with the touches he's getting right now, it seems like Cleveland does want to get him going. But if he doesn't get going, Kareem Hunt's going to start getting more touches once again as well. So going up against a Denver defense that is still ranked dead last in terms of rushing yards allowed and fantasy points allowed to the running back position, Jerome Ford, he's got to pick it up. If he doesn't get going again this week against Denver, it is likely that you're going to see him start to lose touches to Kareem Hunt once again. And while Jerome Ford will bring some safety with him this week, seeing the amount of volume he's getting, Kareem Hunt brings a little bit more risk because, again, he's not getting as many touches as Ford, but he is still seeing some high leverage touches in the red zone. With DTR at the quarterback position right now, they're going to run the football. It's going to happen. They're going to try and pound the football with Jerome Ford and Kareem Hunt this week going up against Denver's run defense, and that is how they will win this game. With 48 rushing attempts in weeks 8 and 10 combined, it looked like Javonte Williams was on the uptick for the amount of volume that he was going to be getting. And lo and behold, more touches, better production, because Javonte Williams was a top 10 running back each of those 2 weeks. But going up against Minnesota in a much closer game where Denver was driving down the field trying to win this game late, we saw a little bit more Samaje Perine and Jaleel McLaughlin in the passing game. And because of that, they were not able to establish any type of a lead, and Javonte Williams just didn't get all the carries that we would have liked to see this week. But Denver's defense is playing a lot better. This team is playing a lot better. And because of that, down the stretch this year, we're going to see Javonte Williams have some better opportunities. But Cleveland's run defense is probably going to give him fits again this week. And I just doubt that we see 25 or more carries this week. So while Javonte Williams might bring some decent low-end RB2 floor for you this week, I just don't think his upside goes much higher than that either. I'll be really honest, like Isaiah Pacheco is the perfect trade target for those of you that need help at the running back position. And if your trade deadline has not passed as of yet, I would be trying to grab him because he's like the best RB2 that you could possibly own. When you take a look at his numbers, they're not gaudy, so people don't really overvalue him because he doesn't reach RB1 status. And the reason for that is he doesn't score a ton of touchdowns. He's not really seeing 20 plus touches a game. And while he does help out in the passing game every once in a while, it's not consistent. So owners aren't over infatuated with Isaiah Pacheco, but when you take a look at the numbers, this is a guy that on a weekly basis has a really nice low-end RB2 floor every single week. And he's got a little bit of ceiling if he scores to take you maybe towards high-end RB2, but that's why he's the perfect trade target. In a tough matchup going up against Philadelphia, he ran for 89 yards on 19 carries. He's definitely a guy that picks up those extra yards and gets you a little bit more every time he touches the football. And if Kansas City is behind, he's not seeing as many rushing attempts as we would like, but he's still getting enough that if we put him in our lineup, the reason that we lose any given week is not Isaiah Pacheco, but he's not the reason that we win either. And that's why you can probably get him at a little bit of a discount for those of you that are looking at trying to acquire a running back before the deadline. Now, going up against Miami this past week, Josh Jacobs did struggle a little bit to really get going. But in the previous 2 games before that, he saw 25 plus carries on the ground in each of those games. Since the switch at the head coach position, they have said that we want to use Josh Jacobs on the ground. We want to win with him and Devontae Adams. And they're doing everything they can to get them the ball. Now, going up against Kansas City next week, we do find ourselves in that situation where if Las Vegas falls behind early, they're going to have to throw it a lot more than what they would like to. Kind of what happened going up against Miami. Now, they battled Miami pretty hard. And given the current state of the Kansas City Chiefs, there's also an opportunity to battle them as well. And the real main key factor in doing that would be running the ball with Josh Jacobs. And speaking of Kansas City, who just allowed over 70 yards on the ground and 100 total yards to DeAndre Swift, this is going to be the time to utilize Josh Jacobs. Go punch Kansas City in the mouth, run it right at them, keep it away from Patrick Mahomes, make the defense work harder than it needs to, and maybe Las Vegas would stand a chance. For Josh Jacobs, he does have a little bit of potential of some low-end RB1 upside for me this week. I don't know if it goes much higher than that because he would need at least 20 carries, and I just don't trust Las Vegas enough to stay in the game long enough to get him the 20 plus carries. The relationship with James Cook and his fantasy owners, plus his probably coaches at this point as well, is the fact that it's a love-hate relationship because it seems like for whatever reason, the coaches love to hate him. And because of that, we love to hate him. But over the last couple of games, we have seen what happens when you put the ball in James Cook's hands and you let him go. Over 100 yards a couple of weeks ago, over 70 rushing yards this past week. But the biggest thing, the biggest takeaway from the game last week is his 4 target. Because that's only the second time since week 5 that he has saw more than 3 targets in a game. And my hope is with the change at the offensive coordinator spot that they're going to start utilizing him a little bit more. Now, they signed Leonard Fournette a few weeks ago, and we still haven't seen him pop up as a guy that's being used. So James Cook seems to be okay right now. Even after those 2 fumbles a couple of weeks ago, they went right back to him this past week. Now, this matchup is not going to be easy for him. Going up against the Eagles' top-rated run defense is probably going to leave a little bit of a lower ceiling than what we would like. But Isaiah Pacheco just had a little bit of success against them as well. And hopefully if Josh Allen is on and feeling a lot better than he has been for the majority of this season, and they are being able to utilize their passing attack against the Eagles secondary that has been suspect this season, it will open a few holes for James Cook. And maybe we don't see 15 carries from him this week, but if we can get him like 10 to 12 carries and then get him another 4 targets in the passing game, there's a good chance he finishes inside the top 24 once again. Now, these 2 teams are complete opposite because if you're going to attack the Eagles through the air, you're actually going to attack the Buffalo Bills on the ground. And that's why DeAndre Swift is going to be such an important factor in this game. Right now for the Philadelphia Eagles, getting DeAndre Swift going on a consistent basis like they did against Kansas City is going to be the key for their offense to continue to grow down the road here and into the playoffs. Because while the Eagles can throw it with the best of them, it actually benefits them more to stay more balanced, because when they stay balanced and you don't know what's coming, it opens up bigger play possibilities for AJ Brown and Devontae Smith. So for the Bills this week, let's attack them with DeAndre Swift on the ground. For him to go over 100 total yards again this week is absolutely going to be a possibility, and he's probably going to be one of my higher ranked running backs for week 12. Some of you keep tattling on yourself in the comments because you're actively rooting against Gus Edwards because you want Keaton Mitchell to be a thing so badly. And Keaton Mitchell is going to get his time. But for right now, Gus Edwards is the guy. He has been a top 7 running back in 4 of his last 5 games. Now, the biggest reason for that is that he's got 9 rushing touchdowns in those 5 games. He's finding the end zone every single week, it feels like right now. And while that luck may run out at some point in time, he plays on an offense that consistently moves the football. that is able to drive down the field and get themselves in a position for Gus Edwards to score. Now, there might be some balancing issues moving forward, knowing that Mark Andrews is going to be done for the rest of the season. He is a big part of that offense, and at the beginning of the year, I'm pretty sure I told you all that he was just as important to the Baltimore Ravens as Travis Kelce was to the Kansas City Chiefs. So what is this offense going to look like the rest of the way with no Mark Andrews? We don't know as of right now, but I can be willing to bet you that they have more receiving talent on the team this year than what they have had in years past. So if they're going to make it through, this would be the year for them to be able to do that without Mark Andrews. Lamar Jackson isn't putting up crazy good fantasy numbers, but he's having one of his better statistical seasons as a passer, and because of that, it is allowing the run game to flourish, with Gus Edwards and Keaton Mitchell also getting a few touches. So for Gus Edwards in this matchup, he's going to bring some risk, because once again, we're going to be hoping for a touchdown, but I also believe they're going to run it a little bit more this week, again, because of the fact that they're going to be missing Mark Andrews, a big piece to this offense. Now, the Chargers were able to shut down the run game for the Green Bay Packers last week, but a couple of weeks ago, they got sliced up by the Lions. So we'll see what they're able to do on the ground this week. My biggest fear here is that it does turn into a shootout, and because of that, Gus Edwards just doesn't get the volume because Baltimore is having to score and score fast. For Keaton Mitchell, he's going to see a few touches in this game, but how many is yet to be seen. They're not giving him an overly complicated workload right now. Gus Edwards hasn't done anything to lose his starting job, so Mitchell really at this point is just coming in for some touches here or there. You can probably expect anywhere from 8 to 11 touches a week, but if he doesn't snap off a big play, that is where you get in trouble because he just hasn't been efficient outside of some big plays so far this year. Keep an eye on that this week and see if he gets worked into the passing game a little bit more if this does turn into a shootout. And if he does get worked in a little bit more, I think then maybe that can tell us what could happen for the rest of the season. But keep in mind, Justice Hill is still seeing a lot of snaps as well, even if he's not doing anything with them. Against Green Bay this past week, Austin Ekeler had his most efficient game on the ground since week 1, running for 64 yards on only 10 carries. But why didn't they run the football more, and why in the heck did they just not utilize him in the passing game? Only 3 targets this past week after 14 targets the last 2 weeks combined. I'm not really sure why all of a sudden they moved away from Austin Ekeler, especially considering how banged up the rest of the team is right now. And going up against Baltimore's passing defense that's currently ranked 3rd in the NFL, you're going to have to utilize Austin Ekeler this week. And I would be willing to bet that we're going to see him get at least 7 targets this coming week because they're going to need it. Keenan Allen is banged up, even though he had another good game last week. Gerald Everett is banged up. Mike Williams is banged up. Quentin Johnston can't catch a football to save his life. Josh Palmer is banged up. Everybody feels like they are banged up right now for the Los Angeles Chargers. Austin Ekeler, we're going to have to get him going. And if it's going to happen, it's going to be in a game like this. Now, the efficiency on the ground may go back to where we have seen as of recent, but we're going to need to get him working in the passing game. And I think that's where we end up finding the touchdown this week. So Monday Night Football this week is just going to have a ton of questions. And unfortunately, this analysis is probably going to be a little bit incomplete. Because of Thanksgiving this week, we have to record all of our shows a lot earlier than what we typically would. So as of this recording, I still have not heard anything on the injury status of Dante Foreman. Now, if he ends up missing this week, Khalil Herbert will once again be the starter, and Roschon Johnson will back him up. But this is a pretty tough matchup. Even if Khalil Herbert is the starter, I'm not sure I really want to risk it this week anyway, unless I'm dealing with a bunch of injuries, and I really don't have a choice. Because right now, Minnesota is ranked 7th against the run, and if Minnesota can play well at home and put up some points, the Chicago Bears are going to have to throw it. And a lot of the rushing attempts, now that Justin Fields is back, are kind of going over to him as well. So we'll have to really see what happens over the next couple of days. Keep an eye out on the rankings episode. And at that point, I can probably try to clarify for you all a little bit more what we may do with this backfield. As of right now, though, I'm going to leave both of these guys in red. And Roschon Johnson is in red as well. If D'Onta Foreman doesn't end up playing this week, then Herbert probably bumps up to a yellow for me, even though he would still be closer to red. And then Roschon Johnson, he'll end up being red because Herbert will get a majority of the touches, like we saw this past week against Detroit after D'Onta Foreman went out. And the other question mark in this game is going to be how much longer the Vikings decide to roll with Alexander Mattison, because fans are calling for Madison's head. He continues to fumble in big moments, and it's costing his team wins now. So when are they going to start going more to Ty Chandler? So Madison, for the majority of the game against Denver, was kind of the guy, like it's been all season. And then they started to work Ty Chandler in a little bit more. A costly fumble from Madison again from this past week could end up costing his job sooner rather than later. But it just feels like even with all the other fumbles, even with all the other issues that they've had with Madison, they are not willing to move away from him. Now, going up against the Bears, the second-ranked run defense in the NFL, even after getting gashed by David Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs against Detroit this past week, they're still going to do a pretty good job of stopping the run. So for me right now, Ty Chandler is the less riskiest option between these two guys, because I also believe he's going to get worked into the passing game a little bit more this week than maybe what Alexander Mattison does. And I also believe that we're probably a little bit closer to a 50-50 split. And because Chandler is a little bit more explosive right now, he has an opportunity for a bigger play. So he'll be yellow for right now. Madison will be red. We'll have to continue to watch updates for this matchup throughout the rest of the week, and I'll update you all on the rankings episode when they come out Wednesday. All right, Headliner Nation, you have got a ton of content coming your way over the next couple of days here on the Fantasy Headliners. It is Thanksgiving week, and we have 4 games before Sunday now that we need to get all the information out to you before Thursday. So we are working hard behind the scenes, and hopefully you all are appreciating it. Don't forget, we're going to be giving away that Manscaped package in this video. So hit the like button, subscribe if you're new here, have those bell notifications on, and use hashtag Manscaped down in the comments below if you want to be entered into the giveaway for that Manscaped package. But for now, I've got to go get other videos done for you. I'm going to get out of here. Peace out, Headliner Nation. Stay safe and healthy, and I'll catch you all in the next episode of the Fantasy Headliners.